think about like of being on a wheelchair, or if you're blind, it's not as broad as we would hope for, or as specific that we could just go, this is my specific condition. If you know how you move or what you do around your house, that's what you need to take and then work around it. So the concept and the idea ends up being the same, just maybe the dimensions or the placement is different depending on what your needs as a caregiver or the needs as a person with a condition need and how they move and act. The kitchen might be one of the hardest. It's not hardest, but it'll take more time and more money because it depends on how much you want to change. There are simple things in the cabinets that you can do that you can buy at Home Depot or things like that, just to, make it more like drawers instead of like cabinet doors. That might be easier, or even changing just the handles of those doors and cabinets that could help the person.
Hello, AGA's allies and caregivers. You are listening to our podcast, The Rare Advocates, a caregiver-worthy and rare disease podcast brought to you by Aicardi-Goutieres Syndrome Advocacy Association. We update you with the latest news and conversations around Aicardi-Goutieres and rare diseases. My name is Betty, producer, but most importantly, I'm a mom of 2 little ones, the youngest one, Noah, who was diagnosed with Aicardi-Goutieres. The stories you're about to hear are close to my heart, and I hope they help you as much as they have helped me. Before we get started on today's episode, a special thanks to Biogen for sponsoring this podcast. And don't forget to join the conversation. We're now on all social media platforms, so be sure to subscribe to the platform you're listening to us from and leave a review. We're thankful you're here, and we hope we can help you in this journey. In today's episode, I'm bringing caregiver, a member of the community, Anais Niembro, who is actually also an architect. So she helped us and volunteered in creating a guide for home accessibility, giving you easy tips and also understanding a little bit more of what makes a home accessible. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her onto the screen. Hi, Anais. How are you?
Hi, Betty. Good. How are you?
Good. I am so happy that we're finally meeting. Right before we started recording, I told Anais that in our Facebook group, we have so many things going on that sometimes we don't get to meet the wonderful parents and get to learn about their talents. So I'm so happy that you're making time for us today and that we're going to be sharing a very helpful resource with our audience today.
Yeah, happy to be part of this.
Wonderful. So Anais, you are a caregiver, and yes. I always say this, like, I meet the most wonderful parents, but it's also like a little bit of a conflicted topic because I kind of wish we were not meeting this way, but I'm thankful that you're giving back to the community because I know you're busy and I understand a little bit of your life. But if you don't mind sharing with us just a little bit of who you are, your family, and the caregiver role that now you have as mom of Annette.
Sure. Yes. So, well, as Betty said, Annette, she's our daughter. She's 3 years old. She was, let's say, diagnosed between when she was 1 year old and 20 months. It just, took us a little bit because you never know what really is. You knew something was there. So, but like officially say, no, yes, this is AGS and, this is it, 20 months. So that's when, everything kind of like really started, and we kind of were like ready already with baricitinib, like everything. We were like, we're just going to do everything. It doesn't matter. Just, bring it in. So that's that. Annette, she's wonderful. She's, the most like happiest kid ever. I always said like, if she doesn't get to do everything, but she gets to be this happy throughout her whole life, I'm okay. She's just happy. So yeah, that's on her end. I'm an architect. I actually just got like recently licensed because even though like when you study architecture and you do, all these years and everything, you have to get licensed to be able to call yourself an architect. And I actually just got licensed very recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's, I don't know how detail
No, this is great.
you wanted to.
Great. No, this is wonderful. So what state are you living in right now, if you don't mind me asking the word?
Florida.
And it's just
Florida.
good to know, because as I bring on guests to the podcast show, everything there is a little bit by state, right? And
Oh, yes.
we have listeners who are not even in the United States, or they're from parts of the world. And so I like to make this known so they can use this as a reference and just see what they can do in their state, and also what they can do in their country, and just take it as inspiration and as another tool in their resource box. So I think this is great. So now you only have your daughter. And,
yes, Annette.
And you work, and I absolutely love that sharing. So you're now combining, the reason you're on the podcast is because you're able to give back to the community, because you're now combining your caregiver experience of living it every day, and as she grows, the needs that you may have, particularly with accessibility at home, as well as now your degree and what you practice, which is architecture. And so
that's correct.
The reason we have you on the podcast is because we'll be releasing a guide for accessibility at home. And so tell us a little bit about, how is accessibility defined for someone starting from zero that may have been in the same journey as us, that our kids are small? And so, like, what do we need to start thinking about, or where do we start? Because it's an unknown place, so it can be a little bit intimidating.
Right. So, I mean, I always say that, I mean, as we know, even within AGS, there's not like one book that is going to tell you, okay, this is what you need to do with accessibility, because each case is different, you know? Annette, she does have a condition. She has certain restrictions, but those might not be the same as every single kid with not even AGS, just every single kid or person that has certain disability or has certain restrictions. So it's very hard to tell you where to start specific without knowing what are your restraints. So, for example, in our case, Annette, she's 3. She crawls everywhere. That's how she moves. And our floor, it's terrible. It's a tile that it's very uneven, because our house, it's somewhat an old house. So she has bruises everywhere. Like, I don't even want to put her like in shorts, because I feel like people are going to be like, what are you doing with your child? And, you know, it's because she crawls everywhere. So, you know, it depends on what your needs are. But I would say, like, just specific, like, general things. Lighting, it's incredibly important for people to be able to see everything and to know, and that's already something specific, you know, because you might not be able to see properly, or like distinguish colors, or you might just not be able to see. So, but that's something that could help, just to be able to see everything with clarity, and be able to differentiate when you have different heights, if there's a step or something in front of you that you can, you know, bump into. Than something as simple as rugs. You know, if you have a rug and then you're moving in a wheelchair, or, you know, you have certain equipment you can bump into, and it might not be easy for you just to step over. So rugs are like one of the things that you're like, you know, if you can just take it out, or just be super thin. Then just circulation within your house. Just, you know, move furniture that people feel comfortable navigating through the spaces. If you can allow, like, you know, a good 3 feet of space to circulate, that's already good enough that, you know, they don't have to be like, okay, I just can be in this corner because I really can fit within that space of furniture. I just can, you know, roll my wheelchair in this case and be there. So there are certain things that you can do that are generic, but as I said before, it really depends on what your needs are. Like right now, when they're little, it's so hard to predict how much they'll be able to do or not do. So right now, it's more of what makes you comfortable and what you need as a caregiver. that it's going to make your life easy. So like for us was like, just put tables on the corners. Let's have a huge space, and the floor that nothing bothers, so she can just, first that she's not going to trip, because it's not that she crawls smoothly, she trips. So, we don't want any tripping hazard or whatever. So that was our main concern. And even now we're like, what if we change the floor? But that's ever okay. Where are we going to go if we change the floor? But so it really depends. Like there's like case by case, and how much you can do as a caregiver, or if the person that has a disability, how much they can do independently, or if they depend on someone else, that the changes will come up.
Yes, so many things. And I know that you have a lot more experience than a lot of us. But I like how you're establishing, okay, well, first and foremost is determining, like, who is the person and where are they in their journey, like their status, to see how much they can move independently or not. And then if they cannot move independently, I'm assuming that, for example, Noah is nonverbal and requires me to move him around. So we rely a lot on carrying and equipment. And so for someone like Noah, then I don't necessarily need to move furniture, or should I still consider move furniture? What?
No, I mean, move furniture, meaning like just for you want to make sure that you have the space you need to move the equipment around. So that you're not, okay, I want to go from the living room to the kitchen, but I have that table, that I like it there in that corner, but then I don't have enough space. So every time you keep, shifting it around. So just, how you move in your space. So just create like a circulation path that that's the easiest for you, and just make sure that you have the space you need to flow around your house. And even like where Noah likes to, because they have these vibes, and they might like that corner of a couch or things like that. So where you want to park the equipment, So that circulation path, that flow that you want to keep wide enough so you don't have to be shifting things around. So maybe you use it like, okay, let's, redecorate, and it's just shifting furniture to create those spaces. That way they don't feel that they're, in the same corner just because that's where they can be. But, you can think about them. Okay, he actually likes this corner of the sofa. So how can I arrange the furniture I have to create the space that I can put his equipment there, and then put him in the sofa, and he'll be, part of us while watching TV, while we're talking, or, just, you're not adding anything or just pushing things around always. You're just rearranging. Let's call it like that. You're rearranging the furniture so it serves that purpose, and you don't have to be doing it, every so often. You just do it once, and then it works.
Yes, and kind of like how you're saying, it's like you call it circulation path, because it's just very similar to traffic path. I have to remember, like, there's the way for equipment to come in and out. So might as well shift things a little bit, so that way I'm not constantly, like you said, moving furniture, and just make everything work around us, and not us have to work around a different furniture. You also mentioned something that it caught my attention that I had not thought about it as much as I should, and that's like the lighting. The lighting you mentioned, right? Could you expand a little bit on what you mean by lighting? I know that Noah has vision problems. He has actually CVI, but I just never thought about it from a like home accessibility perspective. I didn't think about it like that.
Well, just because like when everything is darker, it's hard for you to understand surfaces, depth, dimension. So if you can see clearly, like if you can actually see where you are and know how far things are, maybe you can prepare, you're like, okay, no, that's something there. Let me just go around it, or let me just, not go through there at all. But it's just for awareness. Mostly it's just for you to be more aware, like more prepared, or where you're stepping into, and be able to clearly see. It's like when you're waking up and you want to go to the bathroom at night, now you know the path because you've been doing it so many times. Where when you're staying in a hotel, you're like, no, you're starting touching surfaces because you don't know where things are. But if the light's on, you just stand and go. So it's kind of that same concept. It's mostly for awareness and being able to see what's around. And even like when you don't see 100%, but when there's light, it helps you kind of locate things. And when it's your environment that you're used to and you're always there, you start to recognize things and you're like, oh, okay, I know that I see there. I might not fully see what it is, but I know that's an obstruction that I can't go through, things like that. So it's just to give you that extra sense of awareness and knowing where things are that you're not gonna, be stepping into.
Yes, and that's such a, even though I live with Noah every day, it's such a great reminder because even though he might be moving, he might be able to start like recognizing space and just be more calm. And like you said, like also like the depth and things, and to make him more comfortable. And it's like I constantly have to like remember these things, and it's so good to have someone else remind me because I sometimes go so fast and I just get him from one room to another that I forget about little things like this, and I don't do them on purpose. So we talked about the clearing the pathway and just making it more comfortable. We talked about lighting. What are other ways where we can make our home more accessible, out that are practical? Or is it time to start talking about like things that you have to like build, such as a ramp? What are there any more practical things?
Right. Yeah, I mean there are things small as like, for example, the doors. There's a lot of doors that have door knobs. Those are not accessible at all because most of the time, like for example, Anat, for her, it's really hard to well, I mean, she's always with the fist closed, but if she has to grab something, she'll go like this. So, but if you have a doorknob and then you just change it for a lever, even if you have your fist, you can always, do it with the fist and the door will open. So simple things like that, you don't need anyone to do it. You can just go to Home Depot or buy it on Amazon and you'll change it. That's very easy. Like even now, sometimes when I go to doctor's appointment and I see they have a doorknob and I'm like, seriously, you have a doorknob. So, it's small things.
Like the doors being with a bun, like I think like that. I have so much to continue learning, but yes, that's the doorknob. What other things? I'm assuming light switches too, or no?
Well, light switches, it's most like, so when it comes to switches in general, it's more about like the height where you put it, because there's like 36, from 32 to 36 inches. That's a good height, but then again, that's not for a 3-year-old. That's everything. It's done like, based on standard heights of like men and women. And then accessibility, it's more think about like of being on a wheelchair, or if you're blind, it's not as broad as we would hope for, or as specific that we could just go, this is my specific condition, what is that I need. So that's why you get the broad picture, and then you have to adjust, because I might be saying, for example, for the path, 3 feet, 3 feet is generous, it's a good path, but someone might need something a bit more. So that's why if you know how you move or what you do around your house, that's what you need to take and then work around it. So the concept and the idea ends up being the same, just maybe the dimensions or the placement is different depending on what your needs as a caregiver or the needs as a person with a condition need, and how they move and act.
Yes. And let me ask you another very important question, because one is like, wow, do I need to hire someone like yourself to help me like come up with a plan. And the question is, like, as an architecture, as an architect, did you also have to go out of your way to learn these things, or do all architects learn about ADA and how to make home more accessible? Like, I'm serious about that.
Right. I mean, for example, while I was in school, I did learn some. Okay. Now, my program was very classical, so I do think that's one of the reasons why. Like, in most of the programs was like, okay, if you're doing a cabin, you have to make an accessible cabin and then a standard cabin. But then when you go to work, not everyone knows how to do it properly. I was very lucky to have someone that taught me for the 8 years that I worked with her a lot about accessibility. Like, she would just grab the floor plan and she, like, from the very first moment, she would be like, okay, you don't have the pool space you have here. Where's the hinge space there? The bathroom, you can turn around. So, you know, like, you were just drafting a plan. You were just, you know, starting the concept design. And she would be like, that doesn't work. How's the wheelchair going to turn? You know, so then when you start drafting, you would be like, no, this is not enough. So how we worked in our office, you already automatically started to think about it. But that's not everyone. We worked with amazing companies like together, and we would be like, you have to change this. Yeah. Someone, you know, this is not accessible enough. And those like regulations, they're universal. It's not that, I mean, even though each state does have certain specifics, the ADA Act is universal in the states. You know, there's one, and everyone follows that unless your state has more like stringent, like restrictive conditions. You know, but if not, there's already a general guide for everyone, and you can even Google it online. It's not, you know, that you have to go and learn it. And they have very cute drawings that are very specific. You know, they tell you there's no miss. You know, they tell you from where to where you need the minimum. They would never talk about maximums, or not most of the time. They will always give you the minimum, and it's very easy to follow. So, and then it does depend on the changes that you want to do. Like, for example, if you want to add grab bars to your bathroom, you don't necessarily need to hire an architect. You might want to know where your studs and all that is, and if you have enough reinforcement, because of course the grab bar already has a weight, and then if you're going to be holding yourself onto that, then it's your weight on the grab bar. So you just want to make sure it's installed properly. But you don't necessarily need to hire an architect to do so, to rearrange furniture. Then in the kitchen, if you want, you can just move the things that you know that are used the most to lower cabinets. That way, if the person that has a condition, it's, you know, can open and close things, they're reachable. They don't have to be like, hey, can you please, you know, open that drawer over there and hand, like, pass me that. You know, they'll be able to do it by themselves. So that's like more for them to be more independent. So there are things that you can do at home. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Would the kitchen be just the hardest rooms to make accessible, or what room do you think is the hardest one? Or are they all can be modified?
They're easily modified depending on how much you want to spend. Okay. Honestly, you know, because there are kitchen, like, for example, we were lucky that where we moved, which was like before a NAT or microwave already. It's a drawer microwave underneath the kitchen counter. So that's already accessible, you know. I don't have to think about the counter. Like, whenever she grows and she understands and can use the microwave, it's there. She doesn't need our help. But that's one of the things that, you know, you usually have over the counter, or it's in this, you know, built-in furniture piece, and that it's higher above. So you always want to think that all the kitchen equipment that you use more like on your daily basis, they're like underneath the kitchen counter, not high enough that they can't reach. So you want to have everything accessible. And then the kitchen counter, they usually build it like at 36 inches. If you can do it slightly lower, like 34, you would say, oh, those are 2 inches, but 2 inches, they do make the difference. But then again, this is thinking already on a grown person, not a kid. So the kitchen might be one of the hardest. It's not hardest, but it's just, it'll take more time and more money because it depends on how much you want to change. There are simple things in the cabinets that you can do that you can buy at Home Depot or things like that, just to, make it more like drawers instead of like cabinet doors. That might be easier, or even changing just the handles of those doors and cabinets that could help the person. So there are little things that you can do, but then again, it depends on the person and how much you want to spend or can, because
I was going to say, I'm so thankful that we have someone like you in the community, because I can see how this easily can be so overwhelming for someone and be like, how much do I change immediately? And, kind of like accidentally like jump the gun and do too much when it wasn't necessary to begin with.
Yeah, no, I will always say like for example, when I talk with Alex, he's always like, oh, no, we have to move. And I'm like, not yet. We don't know what she'll be able to do or not do. Right now, she's crawling and we're like practicing with a gait trainer. It's very hard because it doesn't move in our floors. I know. So, maybe we'll practice outdoors. But I'm like, there's an easier change than moving. That's more complicated. So, but I would always say, look at what you need right now and maybe try to picture 3 to 5 years, which might be hard, but it's not that far away that you don't want, because at the same time, you don't know for how long you're going to be there. So you don't want to do too much and then just be like, okay, I'm out. So if you know what you need right now and how you use the space right now, that's already something huge that you might not be thinking about, but it's going to save you a few minutes here and there, and you'll be more comfortable. You'll just be more comfortable. So those are things that don't really require, spending money, and then they'll help you in your like daily life. Then are like real things like, the door lever, shifting things like from up and down, and maybe adjusting lighting, swapping a rug here and there, that you might have to spend some, but it's not something significant that you're like, no, I can't really do it. Even adding a grab bar, if you need that, you can do it to your home, and you might be able to install it. It's always good to have someone that knows, just to make sure. And then, if it falls, you have someone to blame, and you're not like, oh, I didn't do it right. You can call and be like, hey, listen, this really didn't work. So that's always good.
That is the silly advice of thinking about it. Okay, let's just think about it 3, maybe even 5 years ahead. And that way you can be like, okay, this is what we need right now. And then we can think about other things later on.
Yeah, because even their changes need a change, their needs change. So it's just so hard to predict. Like, I used to be a planner. Like, I love planning, and I learned that I just can't plan that far away. So I'm like, okay, what can I do now? Like, from the progress or not progress that I see, I can expect these to happen. So, okay, let's plan to these. That's, I'm not going to be thinking when she's 10, because I told him, I don't even know if we're going to be here. I hope we are, because I love where we live, but who knows? So, I can handle 3 to 5 years. More, who knows,
And I think that's most of us that are on the same shoes, is that we need to just think about short to midterm.
Yeah.
and also be like, oh, what is it like now? I mean, I still remember with Noah for his milestones, like he couldn't even hold his head midline. And now he's really trying to pull his head up. So Noah's very severe for those who don't know. So, but that seemed like so far. And I was like, will we ever accomplish that? And I'm like, oh wow, like now I have to think about like, what other chairs can I have and prop him up so he continue to practice, because he's clearly, trying to do this.
And he wants to, exactly. He wants to.
He really wants to. He's like, you guys are not going to pick me up. I'm about to like jump off the couch.
It's like, hey, exactly. If you don't do it, I'm just going to start rolling here.
Exactly. That's what he's surprising us. And so I really like this advice, because your guide is so comprehensive. And I know you have like the door handles, an example, the moving furniture. And I think that's just very important that, it's a guide to just give you ideas, practical ways, guide you, because I'll admit it, I'm not an architecture person, and we were doing our bathroom remodel, and I just like, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't. And I think it was more of the fact that it's, my son, I just couldn't get through reading guidelines. I just couldn't figure it out. I was just too overwhelmed. So I feel like this guide for our community will be just kind of like a stepping stone and more of a safety guide. So that way you can continue to do further research and be like, oh yes, I read this on the guide. This is right. Now I get it. And it's going to be so much easier. And I really appreciate that. What I do have as a question for you is when we're looking about spending a lot of money, right? Like I'm thinking, for example, we're going to need a ramp one of these days. When it comes to like big changes, do you have like any guides that you can help with parents? Like, for example, like do look for someone certified in, with this certification, like just so that we know how to like choose a little bit on who we want to work with. Is there like any like specific people that we need to look out for when it comes to like big architectural changes?
Well, it always depends on the change that you want to do. Like, for example, for a ramp in residential, it varies, because like you can do, it's not that you can do almost any slope, but when it's residential, there's more wiggle room than if it were to be commercial. I would always say that it's good to go at least with a GC, with a general contractor, because they know how things work around the state. And even though he may say, oh no, you don't really need a building permit for that, they are going to know how to do it properly. Yes. Maybe you start with one of those ramps that it's not fixed. There are like several ramps depending on like if you have stairs and you just want to put it on top, or that you actually want to build a ramp. So there are like so many ramps. I didn't even know the amount of ramps available out there until I started doing the guide. I do know a few, but there are like millions. There are ones that even look like a case. But I guess it always depends on the length and the slope you need. But I always say that when there are big changes, also just because you want to make sure that the money you're spending, it's not going to go to waste, because then something bad happened and then you don't have anyone to go and be able to call and be like, hey, this happened, just come and fix it. When it's bathrooms, for example, if you're already shifting plumbing, for sure, you need a licensed registered engineer, and then you're going to need building permits. So it always depends on how big of a change you want to do, the specialties you'll need. It's always, it might be more expensive to go with like someone licensed, registered, or whatever in your state, but they're going to do it right. They're going to do it by code, and you're going to be safe. Yeah. Now, you don't need a GC to install grab bars, things like that. Or a lever. But yes, when you're going to do something major that then, if you end up moving and you want to sell your house, you want to make sure they're not going to be like, oh, but this is not up to code, fix it before I buy your property, things like that.
Yes, of course. This is so helpful because I want people to be able to listen to this podcast and be able to be like, okay, I feel better into looking for this. I don't have to like make big changes. I can think about like 3 to 5 years, and then I can also feel confident moving forward with someone like a GC who knows, what they're doing, and not think about necessarily doing it myself, like you said. Like, these are the things that you want to make sure that they're not going to fall apart, right? You don't want to. You're already dealing with so many things, so this is so helpful.
Yeah, and like I think like in I believe it's in the guide. If not, we'll add it. Yeah. But we can have the website to the link for all these beautiful drawings that the ADA Act has, because that even will help the families. Like when you're planning, that you're like, okay, I'm not in the stage of let's hire a GC or let's hire an architect or a designer, but I want to know if I have the space to do so. Yeah. This is going to give you the clearances, which again, they're and like you'll see it in their drawings. Those drawings are thinking of someone being on a wheelchair. So again, us as caregivers know more about the actual space we need, but it'll give you an idea. Like you'll see a clearance, or you're going to be like, okay, but my equipment, it's wider. So let me widen up this dimension because I might not need 32, I might need 40 inches, which that we know. And then if we go with a GC, that's or a designer or an architect, it's in like ourselves to give them that information, because they're just going to, follow the guidelines. They don't know how we moved and how we use the space. Only us know. And, you might use it in one way and we'll use it in another. So we also have to tell them, this is what we need and this is the space we need. And they might tell you, no, you're just wasting space. No, I'm not, this is the space I need and this is how we feel comfortable.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I am so thankful we sat down and thought about all of this, because this is just so insightful. And as we start wrapping up this podcast, let me ask you a question. Is there any other piece of advice that you want maybe a family who just recently got diagnosed and they purchased, I don't know, a 2-story house or even like a 3-story house, and they were like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Is there any specific advice that you as a family who also lives with this every day that you want them to know, particularly that you're also like, you have all this knowledge? Is there anything you want them to know?
Well, I can tell you that we live in a 2-story house. So,
So slow down.
Yeah. I wish we were in a 1-story, but it's not bad. It's very doable. Of course, always at the beginning, you're, going into something unknown that you really, really don't know where you're going to get into, how far you're going to be able to get. There's just, so many questions in your head, but it's just going to be okay. And at the end, it's not ideal, but you know that you can always, move elsewhere or maybe adjust, you can adjust. You have to first, settle in and grab all that information that all the doctors are telling you and all that. And then just see, okay, what do we have? Where did we move? What can we shift around to make it more comfortable? And then just go from there. Because like when you start then, changing so many things and making decisions out of nowhere, then there's just more problems or more things to do that you might not need to do now. You might need to do in 5 years, but not right now. Right now, you're okay with what you have and you will be okay. Like, I feel like you find ways to be comfortable with what you have. Like, for example, for us, like sometimes Anat goes like, abajo. I'm like, no. we're staying here. I'm like, I'm not, no, you know? And when we go downstairs, I'm like, we're staying downstairs. We're not going upstairs. We're staying here. So because she's heavy, she's 3 years old. It's already heavy. You know, I can carry her for a little bit, but like when you go up and down, it's exercise I don't want to do. So, but it'll be okay. At the beginning, it's hard to tell someone that they just give you that diagnosis that it's gonna be okay, because it's hard to believe that, but it'll be. So
yeah, in our heads, we're like, no, there's no way, it's not gonna be okay.
Yeah,
but just one day at a time, and I think it helps to see other families being okay, because you're like, hey, that might be me. There's a really good chance, and we all take our time. And there's days that we're really okay, and I don't know about you, but there's days that I'm like, okay, well, not today. I'm not okay.
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, and I think it's important for them to know that, and we really hope that this guide helps them out. Now, this kind of brings me to my last question for you, and it's a vulnerable question, but when you first received the diagnosis, like many of us, we were like shocked, and we just needed to process, and everyone processed in a different way. But now you're giving back, you're helping the community. So I'm sure that makes you feel like, wow, I can't believe it. Now I'm implementing the things I know, and I'm helping others like me. But if you could give Anais from 20 months ago advice, it doesn't have to be about architecture, it doesn't have to be about home accessibility, what would you tell her? And I think this is just like so important for other families to hear.
I think I'll go back to what I said, that it's okay not to be able to plan your life and to have everything, known to the dot, because that was me, I was like, lists, and this is what I'm gonna do, and this is what's going to happen, and that just gave us the stop. That was like, no, wait, now it's not you the one that decide, it's Anat. She's going to tell you how much she'll be able to do or not do, and how far she's going to get, and that's okay. And as I said, as long as she's happy and she keeps that smile that she always has, I'm happy. So I learned not to plan, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay not to know what tomorrow it's going to be like.
Definitely. And I can relate to that, because I can only plan like almost for the next day, and that's it. That's as far as I'll go sometimes. So I really, really appreciate that. Well, Anais, I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing for the community. I will leave a link to download the guide below in the description of this podcast, so that everyone, whether you're officially part of the community or not, just if you find this useful, please go ahead and grab it. And we really, really appreciate everything that your family has done for the community. I'll give a shout out to also your husband, who helped us also with other things. So thank you so much to the both of you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, anytime. We're very glad to be able to help. And also, if there are certain families that have done changes to their home that they're amazing and they might not be part of the guide, just, let us know, because we also learn from those. Like I said, we have very narrow, use that word, guideline that we use as architects, but us as caregivers know way more that we can also give to people that are already doing these changes. So it'll be amazing to be able to incorporate that to a guide. This is what caregivers have done to their home, and it's amazing, and it works.
Yes, we'll come up with a version 2 and add as many pictures as people allow us to, real life examples, and the easy stuff and the hard stuff. I think that's amazing. Great idea. I really appreciate that. Okay, well, I cannot thank you enough for your time. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll be in touch.
For sure. Thank you very much, Betty.